Brandon?
Hey, thanks, Erica. Welcome, everybody, to June's Training Tuesday. We got some exciting stuff going on today, and my little national holiday everyday calendar tells me that today is National Paul Bunyan Day. So, happy National Paul Bunyan Day to everybody on this call today. Yeah, like Erica said, we're going to be talking about reports today. I'll be trying to share best practices for every report that we'll be talking about. And if you've got questions on how best to use reports in your, in your specific implementation and kind of what your best practices are, feel free to ask them. We want to make sure that we're covering as much ground and being as useful as possible to you all. So we'll go ahead, do the standard deal. I'll share my screen. We'll do a little bit of PowerPoints, and then we will launch into a live demo. All right, let me just get my stuff here all set up. All righty, so today's agenda, we'll do a quick overview of reports like this, and then we'll just launch into a live demonstration, and of course, Q&A at the end. But of course, you know me, I like to answer questions as we go too, so don't feel like you have to wait until the end to ask anything that you're wondering about. So as an overview of reports, in case this is new to any of you, it's located in the global navigation bar, the big blue bar at the top of your screen. You've got a big reports menu right there. You hover over it, you'll get a ton of options, and that's what we've pretty much got going there. In addition to that, there's some interesting things that can happen depending on what your user level is when it comes to viewing reports. So lower level users have a different view of the types of reports that are available to them. So if you're a level 9 or a level 10 administrator, you're going to see all of the reports that are available, required actions all the way down to recent publishes with site check, custom reports, and things like that in between. And then if you're a lower level user, anyone from a level 0 to a level 8, you're going to see a couple fewer options. Pretty much the only ones that are really missing entirely is site check and custom reports. But in addition to that, non-admins, so anyone who's level 0 through 8, will see less information than an administrator who's viewing the same report. So in this example, I have a level 10 user, for example, looking at this checked out content report. And as you can see, I can see all of the content that's checked out across all of my users, everyone from Mike Rice to Mary Cassidy to myself, right? However, if I'm logged in as Mike Rice, for example, who's a level, I think, 5 user in my kind of test environment, and I go and check out that checked out content report, I'm only going to see the content that is checked out to me. I'm not going to see other people's checked out content. So a lot of the other reports, not just checked out content, abide by kind of the same rule. If you're not an administrator, you'll only see content that directly applies to you, or in the case of things like recent publishes or recent saves, you'll only see content in the areas that you have access to. So if you can only see pages inside of the academics directory and you can't get anywhere else in the site, you would only see results for pages that are within that directory as opposed to, some other directory like athletics, for example. So that's essentially all we want to do with the overview there. This is pretty much probably review for a lot of you, but we haven't done a Training Tuesday and reports in a couple of years, so we thought that it would be a good time just to kind of revisit it. It's definitely a very important topic. So let's go ahead, launch into a little live demo here. So I've got my sandbox here pulled up. Let me just log in really quick as an administrator. And then we'll actually just go down the line, essentially. We'll be covering every report individually and, make sure that we're talking about all of them here. So I'm going to go up to my reports menu here, and the first report we have is required actions. This is one of the probably most useful reports in my opinion. I find that I use it quite a bit in just kind of my daily work here at OmniUpdate, so I assume that it would be just as useful, if not even more so, for someone who's working on an institution site instead of just this little test environment. The required actions report is actually kind of 2 reports built into one. So the first one is the Broken Pages report, which you all are probably pretty familiar with. What this one does is it looks for any pages that have a broken dependency tag on them, and then it'll list them here in this report. So in this example, you can see that I have 2 pages that have a broken dependency tag on them. You might be wondering how we get broken dependency tags. Typically, it's only if you have a link to a file that has been deleted, for example. So, you send a link to a web page, you delete that web page, but the link is still there on the original page. You're going to have a Broken Pages report listing that page on the dependency tag. So I can see that I have two pages here that have some broken dependency tag on them. Now the next question is, how do I find out what link on these pages is actually broken? If I go to this index page, I made it pretty obvious. Obviously, there's this one that's literally just says broken link, so we could probably assume that. But in a normal situation, you may not have something that's as self-evident. So there's kind of 2 ways to do it. If you were a non-administrator, for example, and didn't have access to the source code viewer, then there's kind of two ways that you can go about finding your broken links. The first way is if you check out the page, you can run page check, and then you just run a link check on there, and it will tell you what links are broken on the page. And this is good because it'll actually, just tell you what URLs are breaking there. But you run the report, and you can see that, hey, there's this link to brokenpage.html that's giving me a 404. So I would just be able to find out wherever that link is and then fix it. But, that doesn't necessarily solve the problem of where on the page that link is. So we have another option. That other option is the link check gadget. Now, if you haven't used the link check gadget, this came out, I think, with version 10.2 about a year ago or so, and I've already got it added here to my gadget sidebar. But if I open up the link check gadget, it will run the same sort of link check that we did if we were running page check. But the good thing about this is that it has context highlighting, so it'll actually tell you where those broken links are on your page. So as we can see, right over here, it's very obvious that my broken link is available right here, and I could just go into the WYSIWYG editor and fix it just like this. But I do want to show the other way, which is, of the 3, probably the most easy. If you're familiar with source code and you have access to the source code editor within the Page Actions toolbar up here, if I click on this, I'm going to be able to enter the editor, scroll down a while, and you'll notice that I have this dependency tag here that's highlighted in super bright red. That is my broken dependency tag. So the system recognizes that this dependency tag is pointing to a file that no longer exists, so it's going to just highlight it, make sure that it's quite obvious that it's broken. And if you're already in here in the source editor, you can just hit backspace, and then maybe you want to relink it to a page that does exist. For example, an index page like this, and you'll see there's my dependency tag again, and now it's been fixed. So if I save, my link will be good there. If I go back to my required actions report, now I don't have that file showing up here in my report. But you might be wondering, I did have 2 links when I ran that link check gadget. The second link was actually the same link to the same page, but it was stored within my sidenav file because, typically if you create a new page, it'll not only have that page, but it'll also add a link to that page into your side navigation. So if you delete that page, then you're going to break any links that were pointing to it on actual web pages, but you also might be breaking a link in your side navigation file. So it's always important to kind of just go through there and not ignore those sidenav.inc files. We can see that there's my broken page link. If I wanted to confirm again, I can go to the source editor. Yep, that one's broken. And I'm actually just going to remove this entirely from the side navigation because obviously we don't want to have a link that is, pointing nowhere in our side nav. So I'll just save this once again, and we'll probably go ahead and publish that. And if we go back to required actions, now we have nothing in our broken pages report, which is wonderful. So hold on a second, I got a quick question coming from Marie, but looks like she's unable to hear the WebEx, so I'm going to really quickly just refer that over to someone else here. Okay. So the other part of the required actions report is the out-of-sync pages report. And this one's pretty easy. The out-of-sync pages report is hold on a second, sorry. All right, so the out-of-sync pages report, sorry about that, was related to kind of a similar principle as the broken pages report. They both kind of deal with dependency tags. The difference is the out-of-sync pages report will track any sort of page that has had some sort of issue syncing the staging server's database with the production server's database. And I will say up front that it is really hard to even replicate these. So typically this isn't something that you need to worry about very often, especially as you're just going throughout your kind of daily life. It's very rare that you're really going to get many out-of-sync pages appearing. But the way you can do it, I actually did make one just for the practice of this. There's kind of two different ways that a syncing error could probably occur. One could be if you're publishing a big file and that file doesn't just publish instantaneously, and somehow you lose internet connection or something like that to where it still was supposed to publish but it never kind of fully did it, then the staging server will kind of be out of sync with the production server and you could get an issue there. The other way is if you have an asset on a page, and then that page somewhere along the line becomes unrenderable. So there's something going on with the Xsl that's rendering the page and making it actually appear here in OU Campus that is broken. So there's some sort of error that's preventing the page from being able to be rendered. And then you go in and try to republish that asset. Then there's going to be a database issue there. The staging server is going to think, oh, we have the new copy of the asset everywhere, but on this one particular page, the new copy of the asset never really got transferred over, so that page is out of sync. So that's essentially what I've done over here. I can see that I have a page that is called out of sync. The first solution is always to try to just republish the page to establish that new connection and make sure that, see if it can actually work. And if we try to hit publish all, it says that a file has been published, but if we go back to this report, oh, looks like we fixed it. Well, I wasn't expecting that to be the case, but that was a surprise. So yeah, the first solution is always to try to just republish the page, because that could potentially fix it. The other way is you might actually have to go and manually adjust the Xsl in order to fix it. What I was expecting to have to do would be going to the Xsl that is rendering this out of sync page, and I would have to go and fix it. So it looks like I'm still getting an Xsl issue. I'm getting this transformation error, so I can't see my page. And we can see that there is, this is my page right here, interiors-broken.xsl. That's what's causing the issue. And we've put a bunch of content in there right at the beginning of my file, which is something that's not allowed. So what I would normally have to do, if I try to publish it again through the report and it's still not working, I can just go to the source, confirm where my file is, and then I could just go to that file and I could fix it. And typically, if your page is able to be rendered and transformed and everything looks good, then you just need to maybe republish the asset again and everything's good. So if I go to this interior broken XSL file, you can see that I've just written Hulk smash right up at the top of the file, which is something that's definitely not allowed by XSL standards or XML standards. So if I just get rid of that and hit save, and we go back to my page, out of sync right here, now at the very least my page is rendering, and if my page is rendering, there's a really good chance that when I trigger the next publish, either from the asset or from this page, there won't be a syncing error again. So typically, even if the issue doesn't appear, or the issue goes away if you try to republish it through the out of sync pages report, it's still probably a good idea to go to that page and just confirm that there's not any sort of XSL error, because that's going to prevent you from editing that page directly anyways. So if you have XSL errors, it's always a good idea to fix them, even if the out of sync error goes away, if that makes sense. So publish that. All right. So enough about the required actions report. Now we'll move on to the checked out content report. And the checked out content report, as we saw in the example, this one's pretty straightforward. It gives you a list of all the files that are checked out. Since I'm an admin here, I am getting a list of all of the files that are checked out by anybody here in my site. So you can see that I've got some files that are checked out to me, which is signified by the light bulb right here. We've got one file that's scheduled to be expired, so until it's fully expired, that file is still technically checked out. This thumbs up icon represents that this file is checked out, or is sent to me for approval. So I need to actually go ahead and give it the thumbs up or the thumbs down. And since it's waiting for my approval, it's checked out to the person who's supposed to approve it, which is me. This one, calendar icon, means it's scheduled to publish. And then the lock icon means that it's just checked out, but to somebody else. And then finally, the person icon, this little human, this means that that file is sent to someone else for approval. So it's not me, I'm not Mary Cassidy, which is why we don't get the thumbs up icon here, we just get the person icon. One of the things that's a really common question that we always get is, what happens if someone is, out on vacation and they've checked out a file that someone else needs to work on? This is where reports really come in handy. Not only can you see the files that are checked out by that person, say Mike Rice is off in Hawaii for 2 weeks or something like that. Someone needs to go and actually edit this study abroad page. But Mike's gone. He left it checked out before he left. So what are we going to be able to do? Well, if I'm logged in as a level 10 administrator, I can simply just click on the lock icon, and that's going to enable me to forcibly check the file back into the system. And that way, whoever needs to work on it can actually work on it and check it in and make some edits to there. So if I click this and hit OK, you'll see that the study abroad page goes away from the checked out content report. That means that nobody's checked it out. And if I actually go to my content menu and go to academics, you'll see that study abroad right here is now just a normal file. So anyone could go in and grab that and work on it. So if you ever run into an issue where a user is unable to approve something or is unable to work on something because it's checked out to some other user, go into the checked out content report, find the file in question, and just click the icon, and there's your solution. So we have a question from Samuel. He's asking if I can further explain the expired status. I'm assuming you're meaning about this Campus Life one that's got the scheduled expiration. I will, but let me go ahead and move on to a couple more reports before we talk about this one, because it's actually going to come into play more with the scheduled actions report. So we will get to it, but it'll just be right after the pending approvals report. So that's the checked out content report. Like I said, fairly straightforward. The next one is called the pending approvals report, and this is where you can kind of get a quick at-a-glance information about items that are in workflow inside your site. So when we talk about workflow, just as a reminder, that means that files have been sent from one user to another in order for that second user to approve the page. It could be more than just 1 to 2. It could be 1 to 2 to 3, or you could have a more complex workflow. But it's a fairly simple process. One person sends it, the other person is the recipient, and that person gets to decide if they send it to a third person, or if they get to publish the page, or if they decline it and prevent it from being published, and maybe there's something wrong with it. So as we can see, I've got 2 approvals here. I'm a level 10 administrator, so I get to see all approvals across my entire site. So there's one approval that's actually been sent to me. Steve Smith has sent it to me, and if I go to that page, for example, we'll wait for it to load here. I have the ability to publish it or decline it, right? So that's fairly straightforward. But if we go to this other page, this housing and dining one, it looks like Jillian sent it to Mary. I'm obviously not Mary. I get to see it because I'm an admin, but if I go to the housing and dining page, as you can see, I don't have the ability to approve it or disapprove it, even though even though I'm a level 10 admin. So we can see that the file is locked to that user, and that user is Mary Cassidy. So we just kind of have to wait for that process to finish. However, there are some more things that you can do as an administrator here. Kind of similar to the checked out content report, you may run into an issue where a file has been sent to a user, but that user is now on vacation and that file is just sitting there waiting to be approved. But of course, the person who's supposed to approve it actually, can't do that right now. So as an administrator, a level 10 administrator specifically, I have the ability to forcibly reassign that page or to cancel the workflow process and just check the file in, just similar to kind of the checked out content report. So, take for example this. Jillian sent it to Mary. Mary thought she was going to be able to get to it before she went off to her honeymoon or something like that. Wasn't able to get to it, so now this file is just sitting there waiting to be approved for 2 weeks while we wait for her to get back. If I can come in here and maybe someone needs to work on that housing and dining page in the meantime, I can go ahead and reassign this page. And it's just another approval dialog box. So I can hit my 2 drop-down menu, and it's going to give me a list of all the files that are in or all the users that are in the system. Maybe Steve Smith is someone who's actually here. I can send that page to Steve, subject, reassigning this to you, and I'm going to just write a message that says, "Hi Steve, Mary is out on vacation. Can you go ahead and review this file and publish if it's good to go? Question mark, thanks." So we can do this, and then I can set this to a private message. So if you remember with workflow, you have public and private messages, so you can kind of track, communication about this particular file. Maybe no one else needs to really see this. I'll just send this to Steve privately, so he'll be the only user to see it. Jillian won't be able to see it. Mary won't be able to see it. And then we'll take things from there. So I can hit send. And as you can see, it immediately is reflected here in the report. The approver is now Steve instead of Mary, and hypothetically, Steve will go in and approve this much more quickly. So I know a lot of times we have questions with regards to workflow about whether we can do group approvals and things like that, and that's something that we don't have available in the product currently. But this is a way that you can get around that potential logjam of, what happens if someone's gone and they need to approve pages. You can, as a level 10 administrator, very easily go to this report, and if someone's out of the office and they, we need files reassigned really quickly, you can just very easily reassign them. You can cancel the workflow process and just go and look at that page yourself. Either one of those options works fine. If this file is sent to you, you can actually approve and publish or decline the file directly from there. So, if you have a whole bunch of files that are good to go because, I trust Steve, I know he's not going to make any mistakes, I could just publish the page right from this report if I wanted to, just to make things go by a little bit quicker, save myself a few mouse clicks. So that's an option there. So now let's go ahead and go to the Scheduled Actions report. This report's going to display three different types of scheduled actions, because those are kind of the 3 that exist. You can have reminders appear in this report, you can have scheduled publishes appear in this report, and then you can also have scheduled expirations appear in this report. So we'll just kind of go down the line. The first one is a reminder, and reminders are simply little messages that you can send to yourself or to any group that you belong to that are either going to be scheduled at a particular date and time. You know, say for example, in this one actually, I can look at this reminder. I've got this one scheduled to send myself a reminder on Thursday at midnight to update the faculty list. So this message is just being sent to myself. Maybe I'd send it to a copy of my email, so I'd just get in that morning and be like, hey, I want to be reminded that I need to update the faculty list today. So I can just have that sitting in my inbox ready to go. So scheduled reminders are kind of the first one that you can do. The other type of reminder we have is what's called a stale reminder, and this one's a little more dynamic. What it does is you set essentially a stale timer saying after X amount of days, weeks, months without being published, this file will be considered stale, and it'll send a message to me asking, or well, not asking, telling me that, you know, this content might potentially be out of date, review it, publish the page out to make sure that we're not just letting things languish forever. But what's dynamic about it is that, you know, it'll see when the page is last published, and then it'll just kind of count down from that time period. But, you know, if the timer is still counting down and the page gets published again, the timer resets. So all you need to do is set how many days or weeks the page is considered to be stale. You write yourself a message, you save those changes, and then voila, that'll keep going until you actually cancel the stale reminder. So that's what a reminder does. Oh, we actually have a question about approvals from Samuel again. So he's asking if Level 10 approves and publishes a page, is the other person notified, or is that something Level 10 has to manually do by email or phone call? You're in luck. That is something that's manually done. I'll actually quickly go back to this report and show you. In this page, when I'm the one who's approving it, if I go to Approve and Publish, you'll see that I have an Approval tab right up here. And this little checkbox here that says Notify Participants, this is what's going to actually message the other people who are involved in the workflow process. So the person who sent it to me, you know, if there's any kind of intermediary people, and it'll just contain this message. You can choose to send it to their email address, or you can have it just sent internally to OU campus. But typically for something like this, definitely send an email. Great question, Samuel. So now moving on to the other two types of scheduled actions. We already covered reminders. Scheduled publishes, they're pretty straightforward. Essentially, if you don't want to publish immediately, but you want it to publish at a particular date and time, you can set that just like this. Let's see if it's going to allow me to. Let me refresh my page. I think something's not working there. All right, so if I try to hit reschedule here, oh, you know what? This page is sent to someone else, so you might not be able. I might not be able to work with it. Either that, or OU campus is just being a little slow. So I'll just do a fake scheduled publish here. So, you know, say I've got the index page. I don't want it to publish right now, but I want it to publish later. I click on schedule just like this. Tells me a date, tells me a time. I can have it repeat if I want, and I can send a little message to myself when the publish actually happens. So, you know, really straightforward. Nothing too strange about that. But you get a list of all the scheduled publishes that exist. Who scheduled the publish, when they did it, and then also where that file is being sent to, like what production server. So if you have like a test production server and then like a web production server, you can see the target for where this page is being published. So that's what this little thing says right here. You should be able to reschedule or unschedule other people's scheduled publishes. So, you know, Mike's the one who scheduled this. Maybe he did that wrong. I can click on unschedule, and it will just check the file in. So it'll cancel the publish process. The publish will not happen at that date and time, and there we go. So we can go ahead and click on this, and it goes away from the report. Now we don't have that scheduled publish. Now the last thing is scheduled expiration, and essentially this is just like an unpublish, essentially. So I've got my June summer activities page right here, and I have it scheduled to expire. And what that means is that at a particular date and time, this file is going to delete itself from the production server, and I believe the staging server as well. It essentially is just you're scheduling the file to recycle itself after a certain, like at a particular time. There's another way that you can schedule expirations. Instead of having the file just delete itself, you can have the URL, stay the same. For example, in this one, June-summer-activities. And then what you can do instead is the content of this page won't be there, but you could pull in content from a different page. It's kind of like a reverse redirect. You know how redirects, you go to one URL and your browser pushes you to the second location? This is kind of the reverse. You go to one URL and then the browser pulls in content from another page and just puts it on that page, if that makes sense. But this one that I have scheduled right here is a recycle type expiration, so it will just delete itself at a particular time. And if I go here, I can unschedule that as well. As you can see, this is what it was going to happen. July 1st at midnight, the file was going to be recycled, which makes sense because it was a June summer activities page. So, once June's done, I don't need to have this page anymore, which is why I had chosen to recycle it. So I'm going to keep that expiration so I can just go right there. So you can always click on the icon as well. Instead of having to hover over actions and go to unschedule, you can just click on it like this, and it will allow you to remove that expiration or any of these others. If I click on the notification icon for this and I want to cancel my scheduled reminder, for example, I'll just click on the checkbox, everything gets grayed out, I hit Save Changes, and there we go. I now no longer have a reminder. So now, oh yeah, we've got a question from Ted about expanding on pulling in content. Let me actually just go to another page and I'll kind of show you a little more visually what I'm talking about with the replace type of expiration. Since it's something that has to be scheduled kind of in the future and past, it'll be hard to kind of show you the full process throughout this webinar, but I'd encourage you just to make a couple test pages in your environment and even just kind of test around and play around with this yourself too. But let's say I want to go to the study abroad page and for some whatever reason I want to expire this. So I'll check my page out. Underneath publish, I'm going to scroll down to expire, and it's going to ask me my expiration type. So recycle, that's the one where it just deletes itself. The replace one is the one that I'm talking about with pulling in content. And essentially what I do is I set my date and time. Let's just use this. And so it's going to say at midnight, or you know what, I don't like using midnight. At 6 a.m. on June 30th, when users go to this academic/study abroad page, instead of them seeing the content that we see kind of behind this dialog box, it's essentially just a contact form. Instead of them seeing that content, they're going to see the content from a file that I'm choosing here. So men's basketball, why not? So when they go to academic/study abroad after 6 a.m. on the 30th, they're going to see the content that resides on the men's basketball page, but their URL is still going to say you're at the study abroad page. So hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. That's essentially what it does. It's kind of a reverse redirect, as I said. Hopefully that metaphor makes a little bit of sense. That's the way that I always at least like to make sense of it. We got a question from Ken as well. So Ken is asking, if a page expires and deletes itself, won't that create a broken link? And is the broken link reported automatically? Yes, if it expires and deletes itself, that will potentially create a broken link because, if anything, it's just going to make a broken link in your side nav. The broken link reported automatically, that's exactly what the required actions report does, the broken pages report specifically. So, if I had a page that had expired and the next morning I check on this and I see, hey, look at my broken pages report, I don't have that file anymore. I would get, a side nav or maybe some other files where that page had been linked, I would just be able to go in here into this report and fix those. So it's not like going to fix itself manually. Like, you're still going to have a broken link on your page, or I mean on your site, but you're still going to have the broken pages report for you to be able to fix those very easily. Okay. So now let's move on to the site check report. This is one of the ones that's only available if you're an administrator. And essentially this one is a little bit different from all the other reports. Instead of just kind of showing you everything across your entire site, this is essentially a giant site-wide link check. So as you can see here, we've got a big scope panel that allows you to adjust where you're actually wanting that site check to run. So you could run it across your entire site if you wanted, or you could be a little more specific and say, I only want to run essentially a link check on these 4 directories: about, academics, admissions, and athletics. And so, you don't worry about blogs. Right now, you're just wanting to know about these 4. And then you have some parameters. You can adjust how long OU Campus considers a timeout. If it waits 10 seconds, it'll consider it a timeout there. Maybe you could extend that to 30 seconds if you have some pages that kind of load pretty slowly. And then also you can choose whether redirects or include files are included inside the check, and whether the link checker will actually follow the redirect to wherever page you're actually being redirected to, as opposed to just validating like, okay, this page works even though there's a redirect on it. And there we go. So I'll just keep this to 10 seconds, make it a little shorter, and I can click Run. And if you're running a really big link check, you don't actually need to stay just staring at this blank screen, because link checks can take a long time, especially if you have big files, and especially if you're, searching a lot of web pages. So I can, go around and do whatever else I need to do while the link checker is running, and then as soon as site check finishes, you get this little dialog box here at the bottom where it says Site Checks Complete, and we've got a link to view the report. But since I just spent some time talking about it, I missed it. So I can actually just go to Site Check right here, and it should give me the last site check that was performed, if I was the one who triggered it. So that's what we've got here. The way that you can view those broken links, there's 3 kind of different sub-reports within this. The default one is just all broken links. It tells you all of the files that have a broken link on there. The reason why I have so many is I have just a little example box that just has hash marks as self-referential links, so they're not really pointing anywhere, which is why I have all these broken ones here. But you can see that we're organizing them by the page that they appear on, and then what the broken URL would be. So if I actually had any sort of broken URL in here, which it looks like I don't, you would be able to actually see that on the page. And then you'll get the status codes and whether the file exists on staging or production, things like that. Ted's got a question. He's asking if a large broken links report will degrade server performance. Off the top of my head, I can't think of a situation where we've really had any sort of performance issues with running a really big site checker, but it's definitely something to keep in mind. Ted, if you want to send me your email address, I can follow up with our IT team and just make sure that that's not an issue, or if it is, best ways to kind of avoid it. But if it's something you are concerned about, I would make sure just to run a big site check, really early in the morning or late in the afternoon where there's less traffic inside OU campus. But the good thing is that the site checker is running on I believe on the staging server as opposed to on your production server. Since we're a decoupled system, I think that you'll be able to avoid any sort of direct impact to your web visitors when you're running it. It may just make OU campus run slowly for people who are actually working in OU campus at that time. So yeah, once again, I'll just check in with our IT team and confirm on that. But I don't think that it's much of a concern. But like I said, I'll follow up. So in addition to the broken links report, just the all broken links one, you have broken links by page, and this essentially just gives you a list of all the files that were actually checked with the site checker, or in this case the 4-folder checker. It'll tell you how many links were okay, how many links had broken, how many links were unchecked. So if you have a mail to link or something like that, it'll just not go over those because obviously it can't validate it, and any that have a warning. And if I hover over, you can see that I have a couple options. I can rerun the checker on a particular page. So maybe I realize, oh man, I shouldn't have 3 broken links on Campus Map. Let me go and fix those. Then I can go back to this report and hit rerun, and it'll just revalidate them. I can preview the page, and I can also hit results, and this will just give me a panel of all of the links that are on this page, so I can see all the ones that are good and also the ones that don't exist, or the ones that give me 404s or whatever. So we've got a couple questions now. Marie is asking if I can explain the not found codes, so everything that's under the status bar, essentially. What these are codes that the web spits out in order to help identify the exact problem with that link. So a 200 status code means that, hey, this link exists, we can travel to it, everything's great. A 404 error means that the file was not found, and there's a bunch of others going from 301 and 302. There's a bunch of them in the 300s. There's more in the 400s as well. I want to say that 301 is something that's permanently redirected. I'm not crazy familiar with what all of these are, but it's essentially a web standard to help further diagnose what's the actual issue with that file. Typically, the only ones you need to really know about are like 404, 200, and because those are the most common. But you'll find others that are like, I can't even think of any off the top of my head, actually. I'm sorry. But let me see if I can perhaps direct you to a couple links that may be a little bit more informative than what I can remember off the top of my head. So I'll do that after this webinar. Barb is asking if this report is only available to level 9s and 10s. Correct. The site check report is only available if you're a level 9 and a 10 reporter, or 9 and 10 administrator. And we've also got another question from Scott. He's asking if it's possible to programmatically access reports like the link checker so it can be automated. I believe that I can't think of any way that you could programmatically access it. What you can do is you can use our new Bookmarks Gadget to bookmark the link checker. So let me quickly talk about the Invalid Pages report, and then I'll talk about what the Bookmarks Gadget can help do. It can't automate it fully. It can't automate it fully, but you can at least more quickly travel to the site check, and you could potentially kind of pre-check a few boxes so you can more easily run a link check across a couple particular folders. So there we go. Tony is asking if the link checkers only work if you have asset management turned on. No, asset management is essentially giving the system the ability to use dependency manager tags with the assets, which is the reusable content that we have here, like image galleries, forms, source code assets, etc. The link checker is completely independent of that. It only checks, just standard links, standard links on your production server. Yeah, it's a totally separate process. So let's just talk about invalid pages here. I don't have anything in this report, which is great. The Invalid Pages report is essentially just a report of any pages that the link checker could not check because it couldn't read the page itself. Essentially, if you have any sort of XSL transformation error that prevents the page from being able to be rendered. And so, remember when we got that transformation error and I didn't get a preview of my page when I traveled to it? If the link checker runs into a page that's like that and it can't check any of those links, that page will show up here in Invalid Pages. So we have a couple other questions. Barb asked a follow-up. She's saying, our clients would love to use this without having to go through us. I assume you mean the link check, the site check feature. Any plans on extending this functionality to them in the future? I don't believe so. I don't think that it's in the roadmap to expand the site check functionality to anyone aside from level 9s and 10s. Your end users do have the ability to go and run link checks across, like on a particular page. So if I just go through here, and they do that through page check. So, you know, if I'm on my library page and I was a lower level user, I could click this check mark here, and you can see that I have a link check built in, and this will just check the links that are on a particular page. So they still have that feature and that functionality, but the ability to check across the entire site, for example, I don't believe that we plan on extending that to lower level users, primarily because the link check gives you a list of the entire site and all of the directories and pages within it, and you know, lower level users more often than not don't have access to the entire site. They only have access to a couple directories within that site, and so, you know, kind of hamstring the link check process in the first place. So I think that might be why. You know, I'm speculating there, but I would say that probably is a reason. Marie is asking, could there be reasons why you would have links show up as being 404 not found, but the link actually works? She says it happens a lot in her site. I would say there could be a lot of reasons for that. If you have a particular instance of those that are happening right now, I definitely suggest filing a support ticket about it so our support team could kind of dive deeper. But speaking hypothetically, one situation that I've seen happen somewhat frequently is, say for example, you have a page on your site and that page gets deleted or recycled or something like that. And then you later on create a page that has that same file name, or you restore that file from the recycle bin. It'll create another dependency tag for that file, even though the URL is still the same, and that could potentially cause that issue. Gosh, I'm trying to think. That may not necessarily give you a 404 error in the site check, because that's checking kind of the end of the day URL. So I don't think that would cause too much of an issue. You know, that's the only reason I can think of off the top of my head. If you've potentially deleted a file, but there's still some links that point to that file, you know, obviously those would be broken, but then you restore that file from the recycle bin and republish it, that creates another dependency tag, even though the URL at the end of the day is still the same. I know that that's caused problems in the required actions report for people before. You know, files will show up as having broken links through this broken pages report because the dependency tag is still different, but the link itself still works when they're on the production server. So that I've seen, but when it comes to the site check report, I don't think that issue would be the same. Oh, she says that hers are always external links. Yeah, you know, that's I'm not quite sure on that one. I would say when you have a situation like that come up, definitely you know, hit our support team up, and we'd be able to look at that more closely. I can't think of a hypothetical situation, but I'm sure that we could dive into it a little more closely once we have some more details on that. Okay, it looks like I finally answered all the link checker questions. That's great. Lots of good questions here. So now let's move on to the custom reports. You might think that just from this menu that there's actually just a single custom report, but this is actually essentially its own subsection worth of reports here. So if I click on this, we can see that we've got a whole bunch of options here in our sidebar. And these reports are custom because you can customize what data you actually want to return when you run the report every time. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. Before we actually talk too much about custom reports, I mentioned that I was going to talk about the Bookmark Gadget with regards to the site checker. So let me just go back and do that really quickly. So this is for you, Scott. the Bookmarks Gadget is something that's fairly new. It came out with version 10.4, which is one of our most recent major release. And essentially, what it allows you to do is just, basically set bookmarks for any screen within OU campus. So I think what I can do is, if I, know that I need to very frequently run a site check on all 4 of these directories, I think it'll actually preserve the checkboxes. We'll test this out. I'm not quite sure. I can click on Bookmark here. It's going to make a bookmark, and I can just say, site check about academics, admissions, athletics. Let's see if this works. So this exists. There's my site check right there. Let's travel just to another page here. And now we've got this bookmark here. So whenever I need to run a site check, I can click on this right here. Ah, darn. All right. I had hopes, but this is probably something that's not being stored within the URL, which is why it's not able to be preserved. But at least I can have my report right here and run this just like so. So I can very quickly go to the site check, and then, I can just 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. But that's about as close as we can get to kind of programmatically accessing reports. But when it comes to things like that, I believe that we're gonna have something kind of pretty near in the future in terms of automated reports, especially with regards to links. So kind of keep your eyes peeled. There may be we might be able to get something that kind of satisfies that need for automation later on down the road. Marie's asking, or says that she doesn't have the Bookmarks Gadget. How do I get it? This applies to any gadget from here on out. If you find that you don't have a gadget loaded into your system, go under the Add-ons tab, click on Marketplace, and it gives you a list of, modules that you can purchase and things like that for OU campus. But if you scroll down to recently added, you'll have the Bookmarks Gadget right here, and it'll probably say something like install or add if it's not loaded into your system. You click on that, and it will essentially just kind of turn it on for your site, and then you can go into the setup menu, go to gadgets, and then it'll have it show up here within your list view. So if no one has the Bookmarks Gadget, go ahead and do it. It's a great little feature, very useful. So all right, now let's go back to custom reports here. So what's custom about them is that you can customize what types of data you're returning about each kind of subject. So we've got a users report. Users report is obviously a way for you to track the users that are in your site. As soon as I click on one of these, it's going to give me a list of report options, and this essentially are the columns of the database that we're going to be retrieving with this particular report. So there's a couple that are always turned on. So in this case, the username is always going to be there. I can say I want to know their last name, their first name, their email address, their user level, and what groups they belong to. And we've got this right here, and I click Run, and now it's going to return that information for me. I get my username, I get their last names, their first names, their email addresses, what their user level is, and then any sort of groups that they belong to. And I can sort by these, etc. I can always export these to a CSV file as well. And if I want to remodify, maybe I don't care about group membership, I can just click on this, and maybe I can just want to see who their approver is instead. I click on Run. Now I have new information. User level is here, approver is here, but I don't have group membership there any longer. And once again, all of these reports, including everything from acquired actions all the way to recent saves, all of these are exportable to a CSV file. So if you want to run some more complicated analytics on them or anything like that, always you can export them. Wonderful tool there. Going back to the Bookmarks Gadget, what's cool about custom reports is I believe, let's see if I'm 0 for 2 on 0 for 2 with regards to checkboxes and whether they're preserved in the Bookmarks Gadget. But I want to say that if I wanted to run a custom report that has this exact information, returning this data, custom reports, name, approver, user level, something like that. Got this. I go away and I click on this again. Boom, yes, I got it, hooray. I can actually preserve the checkboxes that are selected here in my Bookmarks gadget. So if I know I'm running a particular custom report very frequently, definitely a good idea to bookmark it so I don't have to recheck all these checkboxes every time I want to run that particular report. So I just want to share some best practices with regards to custom reports because this area is probably the most useful when we're talking about administration, especially when you're kind of getting just off the ground and kind of starting your site off. Using custom reports is really, really useful when it comes to planning out who can go where, what groups users need to belong to, where you want to assign those groups inside of your site, all of that sort of stuff. So I'll just kind of go down these custom reports and share some best practices for them. So first of all, if you are just getting your site set up and you happen to be using Live or Active Directory or LDAP as your authentication method, definitely recommend using hitting all three of these checkboxes to ensure, just to make sure that all of your users in the site have the LDAP information entered correctly. If you run into a certain user who's not able to log in or something like that, you might want to check to make sure that their LDAP information is added correctly. So I could do this, and I click on Run, and we can see none of my users here have LDAP information except for this one. So, if B. Scheirman 1's trying to add in and we haven't added their LDAP information, there's our issue right there, and then I could easily go in and fix that. Eric's got a question. Eric is asking, is there a way I could generate a report that lists all pages that have not been published recently, e.g. within the last 6 months? If so, I would also like to email the page owners who have pages on the list and encourage them to update their pages. I would say, first of all, Eric, it might be a good idea to set stale reminders on those pages, because that would essentially do that for you without even having to run a report. You could just say the page is stale after 6 months. If it hasn't been published within those 6 months, the user would get an email. The only catch is that right now, in terms of who can receive emails about stale reminders, the user would have to send it to themselves to get the reminder to themselves, or you two would have to belong to the same group. And then you could message them that way. But if you want to do it through a report, we'll talk about that when we talk about the Pages report. But I think that there's a way that you could probably do it. Unfortunately, the email part of it would probably have to be done manually, because I don't think that there's a way that you could send an email directly from the report or something along those lines. You could potentially save yourself some time and just kind of run an export of the results and just send them the CSV saying, hey, if your name's on this list, you need to publish your pages again. But that's kind of up to you how you want to do that. The groups report is really basic. It just says the members that are in the groups and then what the name of the group is. So it's just a nice snapshot of what users make up which groups, especially if you have a whole bunch of groups. This is a really easy way to get all that information at a glance. The Pages report is actually more so than just pages. It also lists any other files that exist on your staging server. So if you have binary management turned on and you have PDFs and Word documents and etc., these files could also potentially show up in the Pages report, or not could also potentially, they will. If it's on the staging server, it'll appear in this custom report. This name kind of reflects what the older kind of mentality of OU Campus back before binary management, where the only things that were on the staging server were just web pages. So that's why it's called that. But in this example, you can sort by path. You can view the access groups, what users are available to access which files. You can see if there's any sort of approvers been applied to these files, the bypass approval group, how many times they've totally been published, their last published date, etc. So let's go ahead and do this to try to get Eric a suggestion here. So what we could do is I could return the path, which is probably useful. I could filter that down if I wanted to. So You know what? I'll just leave it be for right now. I'm going to look at the last published date, and I can select a range of dates. So I can say if it hasn't been published in the last 6 months, I'll check my end date and just go back to like February 1st or something like that. And I won't set a start date because I want everything from the beginning of time all the way up until the 1st of January, so I'll do that there. I'm going to say last save user, so the user who last saved the page, the staging server, the last published user, so the user who last published it, and then we can look at the date created too. I mean, at that point, you really only need last published and maybe the last published or last saved user. And I'll just do that. And when I hit run, you know what, I might actually not get too many results because I've probably published a lot of these pages since then. Let's see what I get. Okay, looks like I get a bunch of stuff in underscore resources, which you never publish, and some of the stuff in the catalog. So, you know, my sandbox isn't probably a great example for this just because, you know, I don't use all of these kind of demonstration files here. But you can see that the last time all of these pages were published was like back in 2015, so that's why they're showing up here. I can see that my last user was this. Looks like ZZ Omni was the person who last saved it. So that's what I'm getting here. In your example, when you run this report, you'll probably get much more varied responses rather than just all of this stuff, because these are files that I've just never touched in my production or in my sandbox here. But on a live site where you're going to have people actually working on every page, that's what you can do there. And I want to say that we have some ability to kind of do kind of quasi-regex stuff inside the path. So if I wanted to exclude stuff in the underscore resources folder, I could probably do that. But off the top of my head, I don't remember what that is. I believe we have it on our support site. But if not, Eric, I will send that to you just because I assume you probably don't want to filter through 10 pages worth of the underscore resources folder when you run this report. But hopefully that answers your question. There is an easy way to view when pages were last published, and you'll have to do that email part manually. But the other alternative is you can start setting those stale reminders. So at the very least, maybe you'll get a reminder that the page is stale and you can forward that off to someone else. So maybe you're the one who's setting all the stale reminders for 6 months. You'll collect those, and then you can just send them out to the person who's responsible for editing that page. Once again, still some manual stuff that you need to do in there, but there are some methods to get what you need there. Moving on to the Directories Report. This one is important for initial setup. I've talked about this in last month's Training Tuesday. First of all, Ted is asking if Path recognizes grep commands. I don't think it does. Once again, I'll have to check with our dev team on that. So Ted, I'll just add that into the email that I'm sending you. I don't believe it recognizes grep commands, but I think we have kind of a special kind of proprietary little bit of syntax that we've added. But there's not too much that you can do within the path field. It doesn't, it's not crazy specific or crazy advanced in terms of what you can do in there. So I will ask though, Ted. All right, Directories Report. This one's really good for initial setup, like I said, because when you're kind of building out your site, you've got all your pages, all of your directories. What's probably really important for you is to make sure that you can figure out what groups belong to which directories, so you can make sure that all of the people that you need to go to particular places can all get there, but they can't get anywhere else. So in the Access and Workflow Training Tuesday last month, I talked about right when you kind of get your site, maybe just run a simple directories report that just lists the path and things like that. You run that, you can export it, you can start saying, okay, these users need to go here, these users need to go to this other place. And then once you portion it all out, and once you've assigned those access groups, you can run another directories report, and this time maybe put the access group, bypass approval, approver, template group in there, and just run that report again to confirm everything is good and works the way you want it to. So, you know, it looks like in this example, I've got everything is pretty much set to default, but once I'm in my faculty directory and the subsequent subdirectories, my template group is changed, which is what I want it to do. And, moving on, looks like, my news directory contains the news template group, so obviously I haven't done too much since I'm the only user working in this when it comes to access group, but you can see that I've changed my template group depending on what directory I'm inside, which is something that you always want to make sure has kind of been built out at the end of the day. So that's what the Directories Report is useful for. The Sites Report is good if you have multiple sites. It'll just give you information about those sites. Page Products is related to the Pages report. Essentially what this does is it lists all of kind of the things that have resulted from you publishing those pages on the staging server. All of those things are going to appear here in the Page Products report. So this one is good if you can determine which pages the file paths live on from the dependency tag subscribers. So if I wanted to do this and I say, I'm looking at all of the files in my About directory, I have this subscribers column checked, and what that's going to do is it's going to see how many files link to the files that are inside here. So if I run About like this, I can see, okay, here's my dependency tags. Here are all the files on the staging server that those dependency tags correspond to, whatever the output file name is, which in this case it's all just HTML files, and then here's my subscribers. So this number 2 means that there are 2 files that are linking to my campus map page. And if I click on the dependency tag, we can see what those 2 files are. So we can see that one of them is the mega nav, so the top big navigation, and then it's the side nav in that same About directory. So if you ever are curious about what pages are linking to a particular page, this Page Products report is really useful for that. And it's also kind of really cool just to kind of see how everything intertwines. So, I've got my mission page. Okay, well, they're all pointing to the mega nav and the side nav. But in other examples on a live site, once again, you'll get kind of some more cool stuff going on there. The Assets Report, this just gives you at-a-glance information about your assets and, things like the access groups that have been applied to those, the asset type, any sort of subscribers. Once again, you can see where your assets have been placed. We've got another question before we move on about assets regarding the Page Products report. Eric is asking if there's a way to generate a report that lists which pages belong to each group. Yes, that's actually through the Pages report. Again, if you go back, you can see that there's that access checkbox, and you can even filter that down if I wanted to. And if I click Run, it will tell me the access group that's applied to all of those pages. So obviously I have a lot of pages and all of them have the Everyone access group, but in a real situation in your faculty directory, you'd probably have a specific faculty or maybe an education group within your faculty directory, and you could see the access group there. Let's go back to assets. Like I said, assets are it's good to get an at-a-glance information for all your assets. Subscribers is useful to see where your assets have been placed on your pages. You can see the asset access, the approver, the bypass approval, just to see who can actually edit which assets, things along those lines, when they were last published, all that sort of stuff. Tweets and Facebook posts. If you're using OU Campus to publish out, if you're using OU Campus to send out Facebook posts or tweets at the same time as you're publishing pages, these custom reports will be able to give you information about those. So essentially, if you've ever used OU Campus to send out a tweet from publishing a page, I could use my tweets report here. It'll tell me what the tweet was, when it happened, the user who triggered the publish, what page it was linked to, the Twitter account that it was sent to, and then the status, as in, whether it worked. And I click Run, and there's the 4 tweets that I've sent out. So here's the content of all those tweets. Here's when they were published. here's the username who triggered them, here's the page that they were published from, here's the Twitter account that they were sent to, etc. And there's my tweet status. Looks like all 3 of these were succeeded. I think that one succeeded too, but then I deleted it from my Twitter account. But this is really good. If you are using social media to publish this out, you can check to see how often these pushes to social medias are happening, and I would, you can use this to kind of encourage more engagement from a social perspective from tweets. So, I mean, same thing with Facebook posts. They both work the same, so it's just a matter of if you want to check up on your Facebook posts or your tweets. We have another question here from Barb, and she is saying, I'm assuming that there isn't a way to see all the pages an access group is assigned to across all of the site. I actually believe there is. So if we go back to the Pages report, these are great questions, by the way. I love answering good questions, and these have all been really top-notch. If I go back to the access group here, what I can do is I'll run this, and I'm going to say I want to see all of the pages that have been applied that have the art department access group applied to them. And I don't really care about any of this sort of stuff. I just want to see the access groups. So I'll say the path and the access group. I might actually not have any. Okay, looks like I don't have any. Better example. Let's just use everyone because I know that there's a lot in there. So I'm just going to do this, select my path, I'm going to click Run, and now it's going to give me a result of every page that has the Everyone access group applied to it. So exactly what you're looking for right there. But obviously in my case, every file has given, and Barb asked a follow-up. She's asking if it's across sites. Off the top of my head, I believe it is just across the single site. I actually am not quite, I think it has to be the entire site because, because I have some other files that have the Everyone access group. So yeah, unfortunately it's only for the single site. You're right there. Galena is not my only site. I have a couple others here. Let's see what happens if I run this. So I've switched to another site here, and I have that custom report. And if I click Run, it's going to give me different results. Yeah, so as you can see, I don't have too much in here, but it will give me less results. So yeah, it looks like it's only going to happen on a per site basis, unfortunately. Trying to think if there's any other way to expand that functionality. Can't think of one off the top of my head, unfortunately. But at least we can know that it checks across a single site. So it's better than nothing, right? Okay, so that essentially wraps up custom reports. If you have some spare time, I definitely suggest checking these out if you haven't already. They're really powerful, and you can get some really cool information. Moving on to the last 2 reports, and these are really easy, recent saves and recent publishes. This just gives you a list of files that have been saved to the staging server recently. So I think that there's a particular date range or like time range that this reflects, and off the top of my head, I want to say it's something like, 2 or 3 months or something along those lines, because I've saved more than 75 pages in my entire time having this test environment, but they're obviously not all listed here. So with this, you can see all of my files, where they were saved, who did it, when it was saved. And what's really nice too is that you can also see other things, not just when something was saved, but maybe if a file was uploaded into the staging server for the first time, if it was reverted using like find and replace reversion, or if it was reverted from the recycle bin, for example. We can see if a file was created from the first place. So if it says created from TCF, that means that you actually made a new page. So it's very detailed in terms of what was done and how it was done. Also, it's really nice to just kind of sort by which user performed those saves. And also, you can check out more recently in terms of dates there as well. Recent publishes, very similar. It's going to tell you when files were published, what file it was, and how it was published, and also who did it. But in addition to that, you'll also notice if any file has been recycled, you'll be able to see that as well, because not only does it reflect any time that something new has been added to the production server in terms of a publish, but also any time something has been removed from the production server, which is essentially what you're doing when you're recycling a file. So once again, you can follow up on which user performed things, what they did, when they did it. So, you know, if you find out that a particular file is like suddenly missing from your production server, and you don't know who did it, but you know what file it is, you can just go to Recent Publishes and sort by your file, and you'll be able to find who recycled that file very easily. So this one's also really important when it comes to an administrator's perspective, because if things mysteriously disappear, this is kind of your first place that you should look. You know, you've got your recycle bin, which is important to look at, but you know, maybe something was permanently deleted. The Recent Publishes report is going to be really useful for you in that situation. And with that, we have now done an exhaustive cover of all of the reports that are available to you. So just to recap, everything from required actions to scheduled actions is available to a level 0 through 8 user, as well as recent saves and publishes. Site check and custom reports are only available to levels 9 and 10. So remember that if you're an admin, you hold the power. You get all those really cool features inside there. In terms of best practices, I'd go another 15 minutes if I had to rehash all of them, but there's a lot of important things you can do as an administrator here. You can force files to be checked in, you can cancel workflow items, you can reschedule scheduled events, you can do a lot of cool stuff with custom reports, and you can see when and where and how people deleted files or published files through recent saves and recent publishes. So with that, I think that that pretty much wraps up what I've got for you today. If there's more Q&A, now's the time for it. But otherwise, we can move on to just kind of getting you excited for next month's Training Tuesday. It's going to be held on July 26th, and we're going to be talking about tag management and how to do some cool stuff with it with Xsl. So if you've been using tag management in the system, it's really great for tagging files to, find them more easily in OU Campus and things like that. But using the power of Xsl, you can also get those tags to do some cool stuff on your production server as well. So get excited for that. We'll be talking about that on July 26th, and you'll get your standard announcement email once we've got the event all set up. But if you want to check the OCN or the support site, we'll have more details there as well. Thank you guys so much. If there's any last-minute questions, feel free to ask them. But without further ado, thanks for all your questions and for your attention today, and we'll see you all next month.